Hi guys, what's up? This is Madeline from Mind Over Madeline. Today I am starting a series on my channel called Psych Saturday. I am a psychology major. I love psychology, I love researching it, I love talking about it. It's one of my favorite things. I kind of wanted to start a series about psychology. And what I'm going to talk about today is the Tuskegee Syphilis experiment. It's also known as the Tuskegee Syphilis study, but this is going to be a 4-part series type of deal. There's going to be Psych Saturday every Saturday, but this specific video is going to be in 4 parts, and I'll explain that in a second. But the first segment of this 4-part series, part 1, is the Tuskegee Syphilis experiment. Now, when I continue this series type of deal, part 2, 3, and 4, it's going to be a little different. So, a big part of psychology is research. And obviously, to be able to research human subjects and participants, there have to be guidelines in place. I am going to talk about 3 very important and controversial experiments that took place that helped to establish the guidelines that psychologists have in place and research have in place in order to do human studies, if that makes sense. So part 1, 2, and 3 is going to be the studies. Each one's a different study. And then the last part is going to be on the guidelines that psychologists and researchers have in place. I'm going to go ahead and apologize right here. If you hear a noise in the background, my guinea pig is drinking water because it's 81 degrees in this house. I'm drinking a smoothie. And my dog is in my living room and he's chewing on a pig ear because he was being really annoying and loud. So I wanted him to be slightly quieter. Come on, dude. So I hope he doesn't make a whole lot of noise, but if you hear a little noise off in the corner over there, it's my guinea pig. He's drinking water. But anyway, I just want to put a little disclaimer. I'm going to put all of the sources that I found, all of my information. I tried to cross-reference as much information as I could to make sure I was getting the absolute most correct information. But I'm going to be totally honest. There were some sources that, although they seemed reliable, I couldn't really cross-reference with other sources. So if I'm saying something that seems a little off or I'm missing stuff that's really important and you know about it, comment below, link some sources, because the biggest thing about this is I want to learn more. I want to help other people learn more. So I'm not going to be offended if you tell me I'm wrong. I'm not going to be offended if you give me more information. That's what I want. I want to know more. I have my notes on my computer right on my lap. If you see me looking down at my computer at all, it's because I'm checking my notes. Another thing is, in the description of this video, I am going to not only put links to all of the sources that I've got my information from, I'm also going to put the actual APA citations in the description. That way, if I'm saying anything, I want you guys to be able to look at it and read along or what have you, further research it, stuff like that. I'm just going to kind of jump into it. This is a pretty hefty study. I don't really know how to explain it other than it's a lot. So the Tuskegee Syphilis experiment took place in 1932 to 1972. So it was an entire 40-year-long experiment. It took place in Tuskegee, Alabama. It is Macon County. It's like bacon, but with an M. So I assume it's Macon County. Flyers went up all over Tuskegee, Alabama. Well, all over Macon County. That said, I'm going to read this part. Free blood tests, free treatment by county health department and government doctors. You may feel well and still have bad blood. Come and bring all your family. These flyers specifically stated for African American men to come and get blood tested to see if they have bad blood. Now, looking further into what bad blood actually meant, it kind of meant a lot of different things. It could mean you have a disease. It could mean you have anything. But as we know now, what they were looking for was syphilis, which is a venereal disease. It kind of creeps me out that it says, come and bring all your family. I don't know, it's a little odd to me. But anyway, a lot of men came to get tested because it said you don't have to feel bad to have bad blood. And this was 1932, so I mean, people were like, oh, free blood tests? Let's go. You know what I mean? I'd probably get a free blood test right now. This study recruited 600 African American males. Most of them were Alabama farmers. They didn't really have a lot of money. So whenever they were all told, hey, you have bad blood, you have this disease, that disease, what have you, be a part of this program. Let's call it a program because, as we will talk about more, none of these men knew exactly what was going on. They did not know what the intentions of this program were. They thought it was to get treatment, but in reality, that's not the case. So 600 males, 399 of these men had syphilis, and 201 of these men were fine. They were told that they had bad blood, but they were actually just a control group. They didn't have anything wrong with them. These participants were told that they were getting free health care, observations, and treatment for their bad blood. When in reality, now knowing the nature of the experiment, we know that they were not getting any of that. Sure, they were getting examined, but they weren't being told any of the information that was coming about from these examinations. They were receiving placebos and being told that they were receiving treatment. Which now, we know, we think about this now and we're like, that's so wrong, but back then that's not the case. That's not how anyone saw it. Over the 40 years of the experiment, these men were being observed. Although they were being told that they were receiving treatment and that they were getting better, in reality they weren't. Some of the participants were dying. They would go insane, they would go blind, and they would be dying. The researchers and doctors that were a part of this experiment were not helping at all. They would watch these men die, they would watch them go blind, they would watch them hurt themselves, and they would do not really anything to help them, to comfort them, to stop them, because the whole nature of this experiment was to see what syphilis does to the body, specifically of African American males. So in 1972, in July of 1972, an article was published basically exposing what the experiment was actually doing, and they shut it down very quickly. Now this part I'm going to put a little bit of a disclaimer again, because I'm actually not super, I don't particularly trust this information just because I didn't really see it anywhere else. I saw, I think, on 2 different sources, but I still want to put that disclaimer because it could be off. Again, this happened in 1972. Things could be a little different, but from what I researched, the final death count and stats of this experiment in 1972 were that 28 participants died of syphilis, 100 died from other complications related to syphilis or related to just being sick in general. 40 spouses were diagnosed with syphilis, because you got to remember, these men thought they were getting better. They thought they were receiving treatment. They thought that it was okay to have sexual relations with their wives because they thought that they were fine. They thought they were getting better. They didn't think that their wives would get sick. But it was passed on to 40 spouses. And this part is really particularly sad to me because 19 children were given syphilis at birth because it was passed to the spouses and then passed to the children, which is just really sad because the entire time these people all trusted these researchers and doctors and thought that they were fine. They thought that they were getting better. They thought that they wouldn't get sick. Now, it is important to note that during the actual course of the experiment in 1945, penicillin was actually recognized as a treatment for syphilis. Yet, this was 13 years after the study started, and it stayed happening for 40. They didn't get actual treatment. They were denied actual treatment when there was a treatment that could have helped these people, that could have saved those people, or at least made them more comfortable. So in 1973, a class action lawsuit began on behalf of the participants of the study. And in 1974, a $10 million out-of-court settlement was reached. The United States government promised medical benefits for life, as well as burial services for all of the surviving participants, and something called the Tuskegee Health Benefit Program was created. And in 1975, the wives, widows, and offsprings of the survivors were also added onto this program. May 16th of 1997, Bill Clinton apologized publicly on behalf of the nation for this study ever taking place. And I do want to point out that a man named Herman Shaw, who was one of the remaining 7 survivors, I'm pretty sure that that's correct. I did cross-reference that, but again, that could be a little off. He was one of the 7 remaining survivors at the time, and Herman, on behalf of all the participants of the study, he did forgive the United States government for this happening, which honestly is just really great. I read a lot about that, and it just seemed really emotional. It was really heartfelt. He was very forgiving. I believe he said something like, although the government did that to him, it's still his government, which I think is just really, he has a lot of integrity. And in 2004, the last survivor passed away on January 16th. And in 2009, the last widow who received benefits from this program passed away on January 27th. And from the sources I found, there are currently 12 offspring who are still receiving benefits from that program. So, that is the basic timeline of this experiment. And I just wanted to kind of get that out there before I start talking about my thoughts on it. It's very interesting because now, as someone who studies psychology, research, things like that, I find it really interesting because I believe my Psych 101 class, so my first psychology class, this was actually before I was a psych major. I was undecided. But I took that class, and I believe one of the first couple weeks of the class, we did talk about this experiment, but very briefly. I actually don't think we talked about it very much because the whole reason that we were talking about this experiment was leading up to the ethical guidelines that this experiment helped set in place in order to keep human subjects safe. Like I said, it's really, really sad and just terrible that these people put so much trust into these researchers that they really thought that they were getting better, and they weren't. These researchers took full advantage of their trust in the government and the doctors that were a part of this, and it's just really sad. But moving on to, I'm going to kind of touch on what the fourth part of this video is going to be about, which is the ethical guidelines. So this experiment, specifically this experiment, and one of the other experiments I'm going to talk about in part 2 were the experiments that directly led to the creation of something called the Belmont Report. The Belmont Report is, like I said, the guidelines that researchers have to follow in order to conduct research on human subjects. There are 3 basic parts of the Belmont Report. It consists on respect for persons, beneficence, I really hope I'm pronouncing that right, and justice. With that, there are 3 subcategories: informed consent, assessment of risks and benefits, and selection of subjects. Now, this report specifically maps out all of the proper guidelines and precautions that researchers should take in order to make sure not just that our research is ethical, but to make sure that human subjects are safe and informed of everything that is going to be happening in the study, that they have full consent of what they plan to do with the human subjects. So this is one of those subjects that I find to be very, very important. I know that as soon as I started researching psychology, I knew that this was important. I am really passionate about psychology, and I'm really happy that I'm able to make videos like this. I honestly, this sounds so silly, but I mean, it's summer right now. It's June 29th. So, and it's a Saturday. It's my only day off. I work 70 hours a week, and I really, really, really wanted to spend my one day off making a video on psychology because I just find it so interesting. I'm not even in school right now. I don't start school until August, and I still wanted to talk about this just because I find it so interesting. But if you are interested in parts 2 through 4 of this series that I'm going to be doing, and other Psych Saturdays and other videos that I'm planning on uploading throughout the weeks. I know I didn't upload any this week. I wanted to kind of start off with a bang, and I wanted to kind of get into the groove and talk about something that I'm very, very comfortable and familiar with. So if you like those, subscribe, like it, comment. If you have any suggestions, comment below. That'd be really awesome because I have some ideas of other videos I want to do in the future, but honestly, none of them are really set in stone besides my parts 1 through 4 that I'm working on right now. But yeah, so if you like this, thank you. And I hope you guys can watch the next video because it's gonna be next video is gonna be a hoot, let me tell you. But yeah, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next Saturday. Bye.